Senate Democrats hoping to take a big step forward on voting rights before heading home for the holidays. Today, Democrats meeting to discuss a possible filibuster carve-out specifically for voting rights. Comes after President Biden said that voting rights are his #1 priority.
There's nothing domestically more important than voting rights. It's the single biggest issue.
But the biggest roadblocks to Democrats passing voting rights are, you guessed it, Senators Manchin and Sinema. Manchin is reportedly engaged in conversations about altering the filibuster for voting rights, just like I'm engaged in talks to be running back for the Seahawks right now. But look, we've been here before. Manchin signaled support only to withdraw it later, reminiscent of Charlie Brown and the football.
This time I'm gonna kick that football clear to the moon.
Poor Charlie Brown, or should it be Franklin, because in this case, the football is voting rights being stolen from mostly black voters. Also remember, this discussion comes in the wake of Manchin and Sinema voting for filibuster carve-outs for the debt ceiling, but so far not willing to do that for voting rights. Seems like America's credit card has more rights than America's voter registration card. Joining me now, Brittany Cooper, professor with Rutgers University, and Roy Tatum, executive director of Legal Shield and formerly with the NAACP. Thank you so much. I will start with our new guest, Roy. I've got to ask you this, and I think nationally, in Washington, D.C. and New York, people are trying to figure out what Senator Sinema is doing. You are in Arizona. You are in a state where voting rights have been gutted. You are in a state where her very chances to be reelected are affected by the kind of voter suppression laws and big lie nonsense and audits that Republicans are pushing. Why the heck is your senator so dead set against protecting the rights not only of constituents in the state, but her own chances to get reelected?
I wish I had an answer for that, Jason. I have no idea what she's doing or what the logic is behind her decision making. She's not met with us as a community, whether it was NAACP or the Urban League or any of our civil rights organizations. We don't understand the logic. She won't talk to us. Some people have obviously had to track her down and try to get answers from her, but she runs away when that happens. It's really, we deserve better than this from Senator Sinema. 100,000 African-American votes helped her become the senator for Arizona. We deserve better as African Americans. We deserve better as a community. We deserve better as a whole. The LGBTQ community came out and I mean, strong for her, and she claims to be their strongest ally. We have to agree that this community, along with African Americans, along with the migrant community, will be the most harmed with no voter protection. We saw what those who want to silence us are willing to do on January the 6th. So we can't take any chances. And she said, if we take out the filibuster, then if the Republicans get in the power, then they'll do the same thing. Well, with no voting protection, she's handing the Republicans the win. She's handing the Republicans the ball on the goal line.
So I want to continue with this idea. Roy just mentioned, Professor Cooper, that, 100,000 African Americans put Kristen Sinema in office. Black voters are really the sort of ground zero, even though this is not a specifically black issue. Black voters are ground zero when it talks about voter suppression. That is generally what Republicans are targeting. And what we have just found out is that one of the ways they tried to do that is not only through voter suppression, but also misinformation. We have a report that just came out now that says that Kanye West's 2020 presidential campaign, which was a very, very vague attempt to somewhat like distract black voters and get Brexit voters and everything else like that, it was completely funded and backed by Republican elites. Yay, how could you be so heartless? Professor Cooper, what the heck were Republicans even thinking in putting somebody like Kanye out there? Did they really think that was going to affect votes one way or another? And second, he is possibly engaged in voter fraud by hiding some of this information. Do you think Ye could be in some sort of legal trouble?
I think that he will get away with it with impunity in the way that most Republicans who are skirting the rule of law seem to manage to escape all forms of accountability. But I think that one of the things we got to recognize about Republicans is that they have no problem manipulating their own community. Just like we saw with the text messages coming out about Fox News folks knowing that the coup was a problem, but then reporting on it as though it wasn't a coup and as though it wasn't particularly violent. They will use misinformation and disinformation campaigns to manipulate anybody that they think that they can pull to their side. And so they targeted and wanted to peel off a small segment of Black male voters just because in such close elections, that kind of targeted appeal seems to work. And so that was the Kanye play, was to peel off a particular kind of conservative-leaning Black male voter. It worked. I mean, they didn't get the majority of Black men, but they certainly got a historic amount of Black male voter turnout, right? And we don't like to talk about that in Black communities because we don't want to demonize Black folks. But I think the broader point here is about the way that none of us is immune to these misinformation and disinformation campaigns on the right. But one of the things that I think we need to be saying about Sinema and Manchin as well is that this simply shows that they never had a commitment to voting rights in the first place, because ultimately they want to maintain the respect of their Republican colleagues, right? They are really in the pocket of these kind of conservative folks. They think that that's where their power lies. They don't have any allegiance to Black communities, even though the only reason that we're able to even talk about them is because Black and brown voters came out in historic numbers to put Democrats in office as a whole. But this is a classic case of the emperor wears no clothes. We now see a clear path that respects the things that they have said are priorities. They don't want to get rid of the filibuster. This leaves the filibuster intact and also allows us to get the things that we need and want. And they simply don't want to do it.
And these sorts of red herrings, whether it's the lieutenant governor candidate you put up in Virginia or Kanye West himself, it's so clear what the sort of disingenuous attempt is to affect Black voters. I'm old enough to remember Kanye West standing on national television saying George Bush doesn't care about Black people. He is now the living embodiment of the story of OJ. I want to play for both of you this audio right now of President Biden talking about how important voting rights are and what the problems are with the Republican Party, and get your thoughts on the other side.
We've supported Democrats fighting for voting rights bills since day one of our administration, making sure that we have unanimous support among Democrats in the Senate, which we do. But each and every time it gets to be brought up, that other team blocks the ability even to start to discuss it. That other team. What used to be called the Republican Party.
I've been to a South Carolina State graduation. I didn't hear a lot of cheering there. It might be because what President Biden said doesn't make much sense. He's blaming the Republicans for the inability of voting rights to move ahead when it's, in fact, senators like Manchin and Sinema that are the problem. Right, Roy?
Absolutely. They have the power. The Democrats control the White House, the Senate, and the House. So all of the campaign promises that you made on the campaign trail, that you made on Super Tuesday, that you made traveling through the South, deliver. That's all we're saying is deliver. Martin Luther King, in one of his final speeches, the mountaintop speech, he said, all we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. That's all we're asking.
Roy Tatum, first off, thank you for being one of the few people on television who can quote something other than the content of their character when we're talking about Martin Luther King. Thank you all so much. Brittany Cooper,
sir.
Roy Tatum, for joining us this evening.